Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fă de moti, miluiește-ne pe noi. That's Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Immortal in Romanian. Let's see. I want to give a shout out to Dale. This donates donates $20. Thank you, Father Deacon. Thank you. Our regular contributor, supporter, Dave the Philippian, donates $10. Thank you, Dave, so much. Let's see. Sfinte Dumnezeule, Sfinte tare, Sfinte fără mote, miluiește-ne pe noi. That's it. The Trisagion prayer in my... What's going on with my voice scratcher? I need more coffee. Probably just that one. I mean, if somebody sang along in Greek, I would know it, but it's because I served in Romanian is the reason why. Let's see, 1 second. All right. Drop the coffee link. Yeah, get some coffee. Have you guys signed up for Montanica? Yeah. Slava Tatălui și Fiului și Sfântului Duh și acum și pururea și în vecii vecilor. Amin. I could read the Romanian prayers for you if you want, but let's do Q&A. What do you got? Juan, ask a question. I'd like to know more about philosophy. What would be a good book to start with? It was a general introduction. That's hard. This was brought up the other day as far as Copplestone's series recommended, and somebody said it was way over their head. Not way over the head, but it was just too much reading. And I think somebody had mentioned Will Durant might have just a general introduction to philosophy. Shoot. This one isn't that bad. This guy, Simon Blackburn's obviously an atheist, and the stuff on God's not great, but it's called Think. Think what you're doing to me. What's that song? All right, let's see what becoming a deacon is like. It's like joining the army. So, Um, what should I say? It's wonderful. I mean, it's joyous. It's hard. And obviously, because of my ministry and being the only clergy member up here too, and having a public profile, like doing prayers and helping people. Obviously, my duties are extraordinary. They're beyond normally what a deacon would. So I don't know. Most deacons don't have the kind of responsibilities that I do, nor do they get the kind of level of attacks and hate. Somebody else was asking me, and they were worried about becoming a diaconate because just seeing the hardships and difficulties I've had to go through, and I'm like, you're not going to be in the same position as me. So, but it is a level of responsibility. Your life's no longer yours. You're held to a higher standard. It's wonderful serving. It's full of joy, but it's difficult. You're part of the priesthood, and what should I say? But it's so joyous to be able to serve. Yeah, Durant's Story of Philosophy. Um, Lorraine asks, how do I approach a career as a nurse when the suffering I encounter all around me seems too much to bear? I mean, when you acquire the spiritual virtues, you get stronger. I mean, think about what clergy have to deal with. That you just do your job. That um, the other thing too is I think you learn on a healthy way to so that you can help the other person and keep yourself physically and emotionally stable is to um not kind of take on the pain in such an empathetic way that it becomes crushing. Like you learn just to, especially like with clergy, for example, um, like we learn boundaries. Like somebody might be in a lot of pain and want to call you all the time, and it sounds cruel, but you just have to be like, nope. You can schedule an appointment. You can, again, this kind of keeping boundaries, um, and not establishing codependent relationships is healthy for the priest, obviously, but the people. And so I remember when I first became clergy, because of what my wife and I went through with the enormous amount of pain and suffering that we went in our lives, I just wanted to help everybody. I wanted to take on all of their pain and help them, and that wasn't healthy. I just had to kind of buckle down and establish boundaries and uh, not be so. What's the word? I want to use empathetic, but I didn't take it. I learned those things, like to look. If I'm gonna help these people, I've got to. There's a word I'm looking for, and I can't think of. I guess it's empathetic. It's like I can be sympathetic without taking on the pain and suffering and the garbage and junk and all the problems of the world on. And that's not cold-hearted. It's actually loving. It's just being mature. So, um, I don't know. I don't know you personally. I don't if everybody's able to do that. But in order to be successful in helping others, you you become strong. You lock it down. Just be like, look, I can't empathetically take this on because it'll break me and it'll hurt the other person. So all right, let's see. Yeah, deacons are fathers. And this is really confusing. Now, in the Serbians, they don't call... So there might be certain traditions that don't do that. Serbians never call deacons fathers. That's their tradition. But Serbians have a bunch of interesting kind of traditions. They have Slavas. They don't give... For example, I was born with the pagan Norse name. For Serbians, that would be my actual name. I wouldn't have taken on a... However, in other jurisdictions, Romanian and Russian, Greek, they're called fathers. And that's because they're part of the priesthood. They actually are priests. There's priests form a class of what you would call the higher order clergy of deacon, presbyter, priest, and bishop. So Protestants and Roman Catholics don't have that. And what the deacon does is different too. Herotonia is the ordination, how they're ordained. All three of those are ordained in the same way. So they're all part of the priesthood. And that's why deacons are priests. It's just, they're not presbyters. They're not priests. So they can't consecrate or something like that. But they offer the Eucharist, thine own, with the priest. They aid the priest. They're attached to the bishop. Anyways, yeah. It's just confusing because of the Western Christians. Also, what's confusing too, you want to get even more confused, Rip? Monks are laity, and they're called fathers. So they're not even part of the priesthood. But I do know why deacons are called fathers, is because they are part of the priesthood. So it becomes confusing in monasteries, like everybody's called father, like who's a priest and who isn't. And that's why they'll have... Yeah, deacons are priests, but they're not presbyters. They're not of the ranking. So it's kind of redundant to say priest. The priest. You have deacon priests, priest, which is what you normally think as your priest, i.e. the presbyter, and then bishop's priest. No, deacon, presbyter, and bishops. The rest are just rankings. So those aren't separate offices. So you only have 3 offices in the priesthood: deacon, presbyter, and episcopos. So there are no more offices than that. You just have titles and rankings, like proto-deacon, archdeacon, proto-presbyter, stavrophore, bishop, archbishop, metropolitan bishop, patriarchal bishop. Yeah. All right, let's see. Bypass a transit while trying to ground transit through PSR. Well, I don't even need to see it. PSR can't by itself ground anything. So, Let's see. I'm going to see if we have any more super chats. Justin Hanley donates $20. Thank you so much. All right, there was something I was going to talk to you guys about. What is going on for news? Today I have a logic class. In about an hour I need to go. We're doing fallacies, which is really interesting. There was an interesting example. There's a student in there that always has really good questions that finds some issue like in the book, and I wish I could remember. Maybe I could pull it out and ask you guys, because I was like, I don't. The student thought that the author's answer was incorrect, and the more I thought about it too, it was like, yeah, I don't know what if that would be the correct answer. So let's see if I can find it. It was supposed to be the fallacy of false analogy, or weak analogy. Let me see if I can pull it up. Problem is, we were using different editions. Oh, here it is. To prevent dangerous weapons from being carried aboard airliners, those seeking to board must pass through magnetometer and to submit to a possible pattern search. Therefore, to prevent alcohol and drugs from being carried into rock concerts, those entering should submit to similar search procedures. The author identifies this as weak analogy. But is it? That's what hold on, Jay, we'll come back to this. All necessary things are explained by the PSR by the necessity P2. What's P2? Why not just reject number 1? All necessary things are explained by PSR. Yeah, how do you know that? By the necessity P2. Oh, because I just assumed what I wanted to prove. Like, that's the easiest way to refute that. Transcendentals are necessary things. Oh, I see what you did. Yeah. All necessary things are explained by PSR by their necessity. That's circular. Number 2, premise 2, transcendental are necessary things. We don't know that. That's just being posited there for yeah. So every one of those premises just begs a question. That's the easiest way to refute that. Thank you so much for... Yeah, I'm praying for the Romanians. I mean, what in the world? Lord have mercy. Doamne miluiește. Anyways, with Georgescu and what they did to him. That's crazy. Yeah. So, my Rugăciunea for Romania. Let's see. Made by Jim Bob. We already explained to the dude that you now need to justify. Yeah, like it doesn't. So again, Jim Bob's correct. It's just an arbitrary assertion. Like, how do we know? Well, remember what we say. If you just grant me that PSR is true, then my premise one is true and PSR is true. But that's what's in question. So are it's arbitrarily or it's viciously circular? All right, help me figure this out with the. I don't see why this is a weak analogy, fallacy, weak analogy. To prevent dangerous weapons from being carried aboard airliners, those seeking to board must pass through a magnetometer, and submit to a possible pat-down search. Therefore, to prevent alcohol and drugs from being carried into rock concerts, those entering should submit to similar procedures. Okay, so the two events, what do we have? Something dangerous that could be brought in. Okay? So, if those actually at some level prevent on airlines bring dangerous things. Weapons are dangerous. And illegal to bring in on planes. Drugs and alcohol are dangerous. So if a procedure, for the most part, is enacted to prevent, for the most part, dangerous things from being brought on board airliners, it should work also for rock concerts. So what's the weak analogy? It seems like the fairly decent analogy. That's what my student brought up, and I was like, that's a good point. Like, I don't know. Let's see what. The fallacy of weak analogy affects inductive arguments from analogy. An argument from analogy is an argument in which the conclusion depends on the existence of analogy, similarity between two things or situations. The fallacy of weak analogy is committed when the analogy is not strong enough to support the conclusion. So what I'm going to think about is, if I were to object against that we should, in order to prevent alcohol and drugs from being carried into rock concerts, submit to similar procedures. What would the argument be that we shouldn't? And then maybe I could see. Yeah, Jacob, it doesn't matter what form it's in. It's like it's an unsound argument. And they're just asserting that you can use. There's no reason to think that you can use retorsion to justify transcendental categories through PSR. So they're just repeating the same thing over and over again. So again, just grant me all my unjustified assumptions, and then I can use retorsion to bootstrap myself and support my first premise. It's like don't grant it to him. Just be like, no. All right. I'm looking at your comments. Hey, look on the every jurisdiction has its issue. Rokor has a lot of issues. It isn't the most based jurisdiction. I'm not going to get into the details and stuff that I know. Every jurisdiction has issues. So get that out of your head that, first of all, Rokor is the most based and they've got some major issues. Okay? So there is no based jurisdiction. Therefore, just get jurisdictionalism out of your heads and find a good local parish. There's good, wonderful local Greek parishes, right? So we just got to stop playing this jurisdictional. All this. First of all, you're not affected by. You are as parishioners are free to go wherever you want. You're not clergy, right? You're not bound to a particular jurisdiction. So find a good priest, find a good community that works. Stop thinking there's some great there's great Rokor priests, there's great OCA priests, there's great Greek priests, Serbian, great parrot like. So just find the one that works and stop thinking about like. But it's frustrating. I was talking with another priest that people think like Rokor. I'm going to Rokor because it's the most conservative. Like they have tons of problems. Like you guys don't even know. I don't know. Nobody's gonna sit down and be like, well, which jurisdiction has the most or something like that. The fact of the matter is there's no perfect jurisdiction in terms of administrative and scandals and issues. So you don't need to worry about it. All you have to worry about is like, is this particular priest and parish a good fit for me? That's it. It's not false analogy. This is an example, Mauricio, of weak analogy. False analogy is another. This is basically saying there is a similarity between the two, and clearly there is, but it's not enough to establish. Now, I can't figure that out because it does seem like, as the student said, but that's what we do that in rock concerts. They do pat downs and stuff like that and search for, and it actually works. So I can't find why this isn't actually strong enough to, because these are what they're called fallacy of weak inductions. There's this list of them. So you have fallacies of relevance, fallacies of weak induction. And weak induction is that it's not enough to actually support the conclusion. It's not strong enough. And it's like, I don't know what seems like a fairly decent, strong enough argument for. And I wish it's not like the author explains his reasoning for. Yeah, just some fantastic Goark priests and parishes. So, if I could just get people past the jurisdictional stuff and thinking like there's the best jurisdiction, I'm going to go to. Oh, maybe that's it. Hold on a second. But it ends. Yeah, so how is passing through a magnetometer going to detect alcohol and drugs? But it does say pat down. So pat downs will work. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the issue is, I can't wait to bring this up in class today. And if you're a mule swallowing drug balloons, pat downs ain't gonna do nothing. So I bet that's what it is. It's the fact like that they add magnetometer scan. Good, thank you. I appreciate that. That's gonna be my guess on what else is going on in the chat? The problem with retorsion is it doesn't explain why it's a justification. It's the same sort of kind of argument that retorsion is you ought to avoid contradiction. Why? Or I can't do this without contradicting. That doesn't even, all that's doing is making a descriptive claim. It never moves into the epistemic or normative claim. There's nothing about that contained within PSR or anybody's stuff other than tag, right? The Orthodox paradigm that explains, okay, well, why is that a justification? Why ought we to do? That's the problem, is that you can't start with propositions or you should avoid contradiction, retorsion, etc., and have that to be a justification, because there's nothing in there that explains why and how that's actually the case. Now, we might use retorsion, but why? Because with the entire paradigm, there's an explanation of why that is a justification, and why you should avoid contradictions. And so that, thank you, Job, $5. I'm looking at your stuff here. Oh, that's a good one too. Maybe the argument is weapons are a higher threat. Yeah, I'm going to try that one too. I'm going to share this with the students and get their feedback. I like that one too. Sour Cookie. Bringing weapons to shoot people on a plane is far higher threat and would require those things to be stopped. Therefore, it's overbearing. You need more. I mean, geez, so maybe the parish is too liberal. Again, think at a parish level rather than jurisdiction. It'd be maybe it's not a good fit. People are too liberal, but don't think in terms of jurisdiction. So just be like, this isn't a particular, like, this isn't good for me. So I'm going to go somewhere else. All right. Hold on a second. By the way, I got some reading glasses. Should I go get them? You see me squint my eyes. Christopher Shame says, when I first started going to the Orthodox Church, I was smacked in the face with the connections between people. I listened to like J. Dyer, Father Peter here. Okay. Vegas. I think there's an Antiochian parish out there. I think I met the priest out there once, but I can't remember offhand. Going through just reading your comments. That's all. So I had an interesting thing yesterday. An opportunity to kind of practice holding my tongue, which during Lent, I'm really going to try that. So it isn't just about, what did Father Russell say about the fast? It's not what goes in your mouth, but what comes out. Basically, he's saying it's less to do about fasting from meats and cheeses and these different things, and what would be more important is holding thy tongue. Put a watch, O Lord, over my mouth and heart. So I'm gonna, pray for me. I'm gonna work on that. Father wants me to work on. That's hard for me because I obviously like to talk, but I've been even given opportunities recently to practice hold your tongue, deacon. There was a guy I really like him, great friend up at a local ski resort, and he was upset. And he says there's some congressman up in Kalispell that he's like, I can't believe it, who basically voted to have women's hygiene products removed out of men's bathrooms. And I'm like, that sounds pretty awesome. And he's like, I can't believe it. What a waste of tax dollars. And blah, blah, blah. And can you believe this? The world's going to hell and on fire, and we're worried about women's hygiene products in. It's like, well, I wanted to say this. Maybe the reason why the world is going to hell is because of little things like that. Little things like, what do we care if, like, Transformers are coming to the bathrooms and men's lockers. So that was the first thing. I mean, I kind of was talking a little bit about, but I could see that I'm like, there's nothing I can say that's going to get through to my friend. And I didn't realize he was so liberal, and supposedly he has Trump derangement syndrome too. I was like, there's this disconnect because I've seen this before where there was somebody that was, remember when Target was putting up all the Skittles stuff, and I made some posts and the professor got all upset and was like, people can't afford homes and afford to live and blah blah blah, but we're concerned about have Transformers and Skittles stuff. And it's like, yeah, that those moral issues are connected to why the world is. And the other thing I noticed too is in the liberals' mindset, keep in mind, they're thoroughly materialistic. All they're concerned about is money. So it's interesting that they criticize, elites and stuff like that and the wealthy. But their entire paradigm is structured in terms of materialism. So the biggest sin in a liberal or leftist mindset is wealth inequality. Not sodomizing and having pervs, and not the moral issues, economic issues, which is really, it shows it's a really atheistic, secular kind of mindset. And remember, Christ says, the poor you will have with me always. I mean, that you always have, but you will not always have. Let me pull up I'm butchering the. Matthew 26:11, which we just read in Matthew 26:11. So notice, and then Jesus was in Bethany at the house of Simon the leper. A woman came to him having an alabaster flask of very costly fragrant oil, and she poured it on his head and set at the table. But when his disciples saw it, they were indignant, saying, What a waste! For this fragrant oil might have been sold. So what do we see with the liberals? So even the apostles fell into a kind of liberal leftist mindset where, look what we could have done for the poor. We could have sold this. It's focusing on money, right? And as if the most important thing is wealth equality, inequality. The worst thing is wealth inequality, and we need wealth equality. It's like, that's totally secular and atheistic and materialistic. This is what Christ is actually saying. But when Jesus was aware of it, he said to them, Why do you trouble the woman? For she has done a good work for me. For you have the poor with you always. So Christ is actually saying, guess what? There's not going to be any political, social, economic system, Gnostic system that you can build that's going to eliminate poverty. Okay? Your priorities are all backwards. Yes, of course, down the line, fourth, fifth things, yeah, it's good the people can have a house and live and stuff like that. But remember, Scripture says, what does it profit a man that he gain in the entire world? That he has wealth equality when he loses his soul. So again, there is no objective moral standards for the liberal and the leftist because they are coming out of a Rousseauian, Marxian, right, where there aren't these things. Everything is materialistic, right? So the only thing and it's always oppressor, right? The one who has more wealth and the oppressed, the one that has least. That is their epistemic first principle, their presupposition which they interpret everything. So that's why the moral issues, they're not connecting it. Well, who cares, he says, about perverts in sports and beating up women and, molesting children and stuff like that. I mean, when the world is going to hell, what does he mean by that? He means something materialistic in terms of rich and poor. And it's totally anti-gospel, is what we're seeing, is that, no, those things are way down the list of importance. What is it going to profit if we give everybody homes and have wealth equality when they're going to go to hell because they're sporting skittles, they're destroying themselves, and again, there is a connection between the socioeconomic instability and moral issues. I couldn't say this. Like, do you think that this person would even understand what I'm saying? Christ says put him first. Father Russell says we're not a charity institution. We do charity. In fact, Christianity and the church established charity. But first things first, we're to save the souls of ourselves and the world. These other things are way, way down the list. And as we see, idolatry and sin is to take lower things and put them as first. So I had that experience yesterday, and what was difficult is I was thinking, so wait a minute. If it's about wasting, first of all, how much money do you think was wasted by the congressman getting a bill to have women's hygiene removed out of men's lockers? And why aren't you complaining that we were wasting money in the first place by putting them in there and stocking them in? Like, that didn't even... So, I had to hold my tongue. I had to practice. And another thing came up. A dear friend of mine goes way back. Let's see. I was given 2 opportunities of that. And, yeah, Justin Hanlon, we're going to talk about USA. So I had a friend that posted, I think he was just being funny, but it was obviously at the Capitol, and it had all the pro-Ukraine, the NAFO people. And I was like, there's very few things that make me as happy as seeing NAFO seethe. And a dear friend of mine, unfortunately he works in the government, and for some reason it's just everything's Russian propaganda, and he's not a liberal. This is what's really crazy. Everything's Russian propaganda, and he's pro-Ukraine, and he says, it's sad to see that you feel happy at the expense of people suffering. Now, he probably was intending, let's go through the logic of this, and I didn't respond because I wanted to keep the friendship, and I actually just deleted the comment, but what I didn't say, I said NAFOs, the people protesting. I didn't say people dying actually in Russia and Ukraine. That I rejoice, and it makes me feel happy. So what I wanted to say is, I'm sorry, liberal tears and NAFO and liberal tears aren't real suffering. So I can rejoice in that. And it's crazy. Like, we had gotten into arguments before about, he thinks that the Russian kind of narrative of the history of Ukraine is all just Russian Putin propaganda, and my argument years back was that, look, you don't have to be a pro-Putin, pro-Russia person to understand who's the real bad guy is NATO, right? And the Biden administration actually trying to get us into a nuclear war, that was perceived as aggression. right? And we could go through the entire history of the expansion and the warnings from Russia about NATO expansion, why that area is so sensitive as far as geographically, as far as if NATO were to ever launch an offensive war into Russia. That's supposed to be a neutral zone, right? So what do? We arm that area and rebels, right? We literally do a color revolution. We install puppet CIA stooges to run the country, to infiltrate and turn into a fake gay Skittles secular, and they were aggressing, right? The narrative on the other side is just like, oh, Russian imperialism, they're just trying to. So we'd argued many years back and forth. I couldn't get any headway with. But let's just think about it this way. What I don't understand is, even if I put that aside, so let's suppose Putin's all propaganda and lies about the history of the Ukraine and what was going on. We have an opportunity to end this war right now. The only reason why all these people have been dying, this would have been done years ago, is because we're funding this war. So you're actually causing people to suffer and be killed. Nobody wants this. I mean, all this stuff's coming out about, what's been going on. But let's just put it this way, really easy. You're going to take the side of a Jewish, gay, CIA propped up stooge who's been stealing millions of dollars, taking millions of dollars of U.S. tax dollars and U.S. aid that can't even be accounted for, to persecute Orthodox Christians and to make a fake and gay nation. That's who you're actually. I mean, let's just forget everything else. Doesn't mean I'm pro Putin, pro Russia, or anything like that. That's the side that you're on, and you claim to be a Christian. I don't get it. Don't be involved. Don't support it. You don't need to support Ukraine. It doesn't make any sense. It's not a good. And you don't need to get stuck into dialogue. Well, Putin and Russia are bad too. Who cares if that were even true? Why are you supporting a fake and gay? Why is our money going to? Speaking of, we can't even feed people. Why are we funding a foreign nation, a fake and gay nation, to persecute Orthodox Christians and lock them up, and to get us into a nuclear war? Does that make... I just... mind-boggling. But again, you have to ask yourself, as straightforward and easy as things are, like that to see, do you think that this person would have heard it? No matter how obvious and evident the facts are, they'll always reinterpret it. And in that case, I had to practice. I'll hold my tongue for the sake of my friendship. So there's a lot of kind of opportunities like that. Let's just check. I'm about to get going pretty soon to go teach logic. PGA Lifestyle donates $1.99. Do you have a favorite Old Testament commentary? Is it OSB? I have the Bible and the Holy Fathers up there. That's pretty cool. What else? Oh no. I've got 2 students send me an email. They're not coming to class. I wasn't asking. would be funny if I was super crazy like that. Wasn't asking if you were coming to class. You're coming to class. That's the law. Law Dog says. Alrighty. Where's the money, Lebowski? Excuse me. One second. There was something else I wanted to. I have heard this objection before, but the response. This was something about somebody was asking whether Aristotle's virtues, we would accept all of Aristotle's virtues, the Nicomachean Ethics, magnanimity. That magnanimous is called prideful. And I want to say that I've heard that objection before, but I've heard the responses back. Okay, other issues I wanted to bring up. Where's Jim Bob? Wasn't he in here? There was some spurg in Jim Bob's chat. The other day. They were saying he denied the law of identity or something like that, or doesn't. Well, obviously I can't respond to this person because there's no identity between. But what's really interesting is that people that take these philosophical positions, and what was funny is that this person had no experience with philosophy whatsoever. So I noticed something in the chat. I'm like, Frege answers this. You're confusing sense and reference. You need to go read sense and reference. I kid you not, 3 minutes later, he was like, claimed that he went and looked. So I guarantee you looked up a Wikipedia about it. Like, that article's difficult. Sense and reference. Especially, I guarantee you didn't understand much of any of it, even if you had even a couple days to read it, if you have no philosophical background. And I just don't get. It's so weird. And he missed the point, obviously, too. He just went right back into a confusion of sense and reference in terms of identity. And taking what's confusing me is taking philosophical positions, and you can see it in his language that it's just like, it's totally retarded. Like, it doesn't make sense. I'm like, I don't know where you're getting, but there's this pride in, like, well, I know what I'm talking about. Like, Listen to this. I copied and pasted it. In the law of identity, does your... So he's talking about a wedding ring for some reason. The ring of Gyges. Contain all possible sets of information. What the heck? Why? Who told you that an entity... I mean, I don't... First of all, I don't even know... To be able to reference an identity, that must contain all possible sets of information. In order to reference... Like, that's weird. So I don't even get what this guy's talking about. Or is it dependent on variable sets of information by referent mind? Yeah, I should ask this guy, like, why are you using this? Where did you get this vocabulary from? You just making it up? The first thing that kind of comes to my mind is, I don't have to... This is the distinction between necessary or essential properties. I can identify, obviously, the identity of something. I mean, think about this. I have all kinds of different properties that change. What do we mean by identity over time? So my hair colors change, those are not essential attributes. So I don't need to name every single predicate that all have in this life and every possible world in order to identify that the person in that picture at 4 years old is the same person as... That's what identity is, isn't it? Referring to the essential parts of... So, it gets a little bit more difficult with artifacts. But in theory, there's a minimum, right, that's necessary. This guy goes to that you would have to refer to all of possible sets. Like, who told you? That's weird. The second... Oh, I'm gonna have to get going. The second point is, again, he falls back on reference. So go read Frege's Sense and Reference, and it's about, again, Hesperus and Phosphorus, the morning and the evening star is one of the examples used that have different features to the referent mind as this guy. All right. They're represented in different ways. One's in the east, one's in the north, the south, etc. Different luminosity, such that you would think that they're two different entities, but they end up being identical. So this is what he goes into. The sense could be different, but the reference the same, i.e. identity. So before any of you guys start making bold claims about identity, you should probably read up on the literature, logic, how these things are established before. It's just, you're embarrassing yourself when you make these kinds of claims, and yet you have no idea what you're talking about. You're using words that are totally ambiguous and vague and not used in philosophy to make philosophical positions. All right, God bless you guys. I got to get running to go teach logic. And let me just make sure I'm not missing any super chats anymore. Thank you for joining prayers, those of you who joined prayers. And that is all. I'm out of here. Until next time, God bless you and keep you and preserve you, and that we may all be given a wonderful, blessed Lent. Until next time, bye-bye.